Emily Parker stepped off the transport bus onto the sprawling, sun-scorched grounds of the Marine Corps recruit depot. The heat was oppressive, sticking her uniform to her skin, but she barely noticed. Her gaze was fixed on the towering barracks, the obstacle courses, and the lines of Marines already marching with precision. She adjusted the straps of her pack, took a deep breath, and reminded herself why she had chosen this path: to prove to herself and to everyone else that she could thrive where most doubted she belonged. Coming from a small town in Oregon, Emily had always been considered the quiet one. People underestimated her. They assumed she lacked the physicality or toughness to compete with others in rigorous physical endeavors. But Emily's quietness was misleading. Beneath her soft-spoken exterior burned a discipline honed over years of rigorous martial arts training. Her father had enrolled her in karate classes at the age of 6, claiming she needed something to protect herself in this unpredictable world. That early training had taught her much more than just kicks and punches. It had instilled focus, resilience, and a calmness under pressure that would now serve her in ways she was only beginning to realize. As Emily approached the parade grounds, the laughter began. It was subtle, at first a few stifled chuckles, but quickly escalated as a group of male recruits noticed her slim frame and the hesitant way she carried herself. "Hey, watch out! The little lady's coming through," one of them jeered, smirking broadly. Another added, "Hope she's ready to eat dirt." Their voices carried easily across the open courtyard, bouncing off the barracks and echoing through the morning air. Emily's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She had learned early that silence could be more powerful than words. Instead of letting their mockery shake her, she let it fuel her. Her first glimpse of her fellow recruits was intimidating. Towering men with broad shoulders and confident strides moved in coordinated lines, their voices and laughter exuding camaraderie and toughness. They didn't see her as a peer, not yet. She was an outsider, a girl who had dared to enter a male-dominated world where strength and aggression were the currency of respect. Emily felt the weight of their scrutiny, but she refused to falter. In that moment, she resolved that every chuckle, every dismissive glance, would serve as motivation. She would not only survive this training, she would excel. The first order of business was assembling in formation, a test of discipline and attention to detail. Emily joined the line, noticing how unevenly her uniform hung compared to the perfectly squared shoulders and polished boots of her fellow recruits. Instructors began their inspection, walking slowly down the line, eyes sharp and unwavering. Emily's heart pounded as she anticipated critique, fearing the embarrassment of a failed first impression. Yet as the instructor approached, she straightened, lifted her chin, and met the gaze with quiet confidence. Though small in stature compared to the Marines surrounding her, Emily's posture radiated a determination that could not be mocked. Following the inspection, the drill instructors began issuing orders, their voices booming like thunder across the parade ground. Emily struggled at first to keep pace with the rapid cadence, the synchronized movements of hundreds of recruits feeling almost mechanical. Each command was precise, each step timed perfectly to the sound of shouted orders. At one point, she misstepped, her heel catching the edge of the curb. Laughter erupted immediately from nearby recruits. "Watch it, Tiny," one shouted. "Need a hand?" Another chimed. Emily felt her cheeks flush, but she held her composure. She straightened instantly, repeating the movement flawlessly on the next try, ignoring the whispers and laughter. After the initial drills, the recruits were led to the obstacle course for their first physical assessment. The sun beat down mercilessly, sweat dripping from foreheads and soaking through uniforms. Emily's first challenge was the high wall, a looming structure that looked impossible to scale at first glance. Her male counterparts approached it with brute strength, leaping and pulling themselves up effortlessly. Emily paused, calculating. She knew she didn't have the same raw power, but she had years of technique ingrained in her muscles from martial arts. She measured her run-up, planted her feet carefully, and launched herself with precision, grabbing the top of the wall and swinging her legs over with perfect control. She landed softly, feet firm, breathing steady. Some recruits stared in disbelief. Next came the rope climb, the narrow balance beam, and the mud-filled trench crawl. Each obstacle tested not only strength, but endurance and mental fortitude. Emily pushed herself past fatigue, remembering every lesson from years of disciplined training. Her arms burned, her legs ached, but she refused to falter. She focused on technique rather than raw power, conserving energy where others relied solely on brute strength. Her pace was steady, measured, and remarkably efficient. By the time she finished, some of her peers were already gasping for breath, while she remained controlled, her heart rate steady, her body exhausted but triumphant. Despite these early successes, the laughter didn't stop. Recruits whispered, pointing fingers, and made exaggerated gestures mimicking her movements. "She's slow, but at least she's polite," one sneered. Emily noticed, but she refused to respond. She knew that proving herself was not about arguing or seeking validation. It was about performance. Every movement, every step, every lift was a statement stronger than any words could convey. She silently vowed that they would laugh less and stare more by the end of training. By midday, recruits were gathering for hand-to-hand combat introductions. Emily's stomach tightened with anticipation. This was the moment she had been preparing for, not merely to survive, but to demonstrate the power that others had underestimated. She glanced around, noting the smirks and rolling eyes of those who doubted her. It was not just a fight, it was a test of everything she had trained for, in secret. From the disciplined strikes of karate to the precise leverage moves she had spent hours perfecting. The instructors called her name. She stepped forward with calm determination, aware of every pair of eyes on her. As she entered the sparring ring, her opponent towered over her, a burly recruit with arms like tree trunks and a grin that suggested easy victory. The crowd of recruits and instructors watched with amusement, whispering bets on how long she would last. Emily's focus sharpened. She could feel every muscle in her body, tense and ready, recalling every drill, every lesson, every hour of relentless practice. Then, with a calmness that belied the chaos of her surroundings, she moved. Her first feints were deliberate, testing his reactions. She dodged his swings, slipped past his defenses, and countered with precise strikes that stunned him. The room's laughter faltered into shocked silence as she displayed a skill that no one had anticipated. Her movements were fluid, decisive, and powerful far beyond what anyone had imagined from someone her size. Emily's heart raced, adrenaline surged, but her expression remained steady, focused, unyielding. By the end of the session, she had left the other recruit momentarily staggered, earning the astonished attention of instructors and peers alike. The whispers grew. "She's fast. She's strong. She's dangerous." Emily stepped out of the ring, sweat dripping from her brow, chest heaving, yet internally exhilarated. She had survived her first true test and had sent a clear message. Underestimation was her greatest weapon. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the grounds, Emily sat quietly on the steps of the barracks, reviewing the day's events in her mind. The laughter, the mockery, the doubted all now felt like fuel. She realized that this was only the beginning. She had entered the Marine Corps to prove herself, but what she had discovered was far more powerful. Her strength wasn't merely physical. It was the resilience to face ridicule, the discipline to persist despite obstacles, and the quiet confidence to let actions speak louder than words. Emily Parker knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Marines might laugh at her now, but soon that laughter would turn to awe. She had arrived underestimated, dismissed, and doubted, but she would leave a storm in her wake, one that no one would see coming until it hit. The second day of training began long before the sun rose, the chill of early morning biting through Emily's uniform. She awoke in the barracks to the sound of blaring horns and shouted orders echoing down the rows of bunks. Sleep-deprived and sore from the previous day's trials, she forced herself out of bed. Her muscles protested with every movement, and a dull ache lingered in her arms and legs. She had expected this. Of course, the grueling demands of Marine training were infamous, but the reality was harsher than anything she had imagined. Still, Emily refused to let discomfort slow her. Breakfast was a silent affair. Around her, recruits devoured eggs, toast, and grits with mechanical precision, sizing each other up, exchanging quiet taunts, or sharing jokes about the new girl. Emily, small and slight compared to the other Marines, kept her focus entirely on nourishment. She knew energy would be critical today. The day's challenges promised to test endurance more than sheer strength. As she ate, she replayed the previous day's combat exercises in her mind. Every movement, every dodge, every strike, she relived it, noting where she could improve. Her ability to analyze and adapt had always been one of her greatest assets. After breakfast, the recruits assembled on the parade grounds. The drill instructors wasted no time. Today's agenda was even more physically demanding. Timed runs, obstacle courses, and the first endurance test involving full gear. Emily felt her pulse quicken as the instructors barked orders with relentless intensity. She glanced at the other recruits, noting the ease with which some of them handled the weight and speed of the drills. It would be a challenge, but Emily had learned early in life that discipline and technique often outweighed brute force. She reminded herself that this was her battlefield of strategy, as much as it was of strength. The first event was a long-distance run, designed to push recruits beyond their limits. Emily fell into the cadence of the group, each step heavy against the cracked asphalt. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, and sweat poured into her eyes. Recruits around her, taller and stronger, surged ahead effortlessly, and some shouted mocking encouragements. "Come on, slowpoke. Need a piggyback?" Emily ignored them, focusing on maintaining a steady pace and conserving energy for later challenges. Every few steps, she reminded herself, persistence, not speed, would carry her through. By the time she reached the finish line, gasping and trembling, she was behind many of her peers, but she had finished, and that counted as victory. Next came the obstacle course, designed to test agility, strength, and mental focus simultaneously. The towering walls, narrow balance beams, rope climbs, and mud pits loomed like insurmountable challenges. Emily approached the first wall, muscles quivering with effort. She remembered her father's lessons in martial arts, technique over force. She positioned her hands carefully, planted her feet precisely, and propelled herself upward, swinging her legs over the top with practiced grace. Her landing was solid. Nearby recruits who had sneered moments ago paused, eyebrows raised in surprise. The laughter began to fade. The rope climb was even more grueling. Each pole required not just arm strength, but core stability and mental control. Emily's forearms burned, her grip strained, and sweat made the rope slick beneath her fingers. She took a deep breath, locked her muscles, and ascended with rhythmic precision. When she reached the top, she paused briefly to steady herself, and descended safely. Some of her peers were struggling, frustrated and gasping for air, while Emily remained calm. Her smaller frame, often mocked as a disadvantage, allowed her to move with speed and efficiency that the larger recruits lacked. Mud pits and crawling exercises followed, designed to simulate battlefield conditions. The wet, sticky earth clung to her uniform, weighing her down and testing her endurance. Recruits who had laughed at her earlier now found themselves slipping, sliding, and slowing down. Emily embraced the challenge, moving deliberately, using every technique she had learned in years of martial arts to maintain balance, conserve energy, and navigate obstacles effectively. She could feel the shift in atmosphere, and mocking chuckles were now replaced by wary glances. By mid-morning, the recruits faced a test of strength and teamwork, carrying heavy packs and stretchers across uneven terrain. Emily's pack weighed heavily on her back, every step demanding effort, but she had trained her body to endure. She synchronized with her assigned teammates, moving in rhythm, using her small size to maneuver efficiently. When one recruit stumbled, Emily quickly adjusted, preventing the group from losing momentum. For the first time, she felt a hint of respect from her peers. She wasn't just surviving, she was contributing, leading quietly through skill rather than words. But despite these small triumphs, Emily faced moments of crushing doubt. During a sparring drill in the afternoon, her opponent, a tall, muscular recruit, known for aggressive attacks, pushed her to the limit. His strikes were powerful, his reach intimidating, and for a moment, Emily felt cornered. The laughter of others rang in her ears, echoing the doubts she tried to suppress. She took a deep breath, centering herself, and relied on her training. Sidestepping with precise timing, she redirected his momentum, landing a controlled counter that left him off balance. The instructors nodded in approval. Some of her fellow recruits stared, a mix of surprise and grudging admiration in their eyes. After the sparring session, Emily retreated briefly to a quiet corner of the training ground. She allowed herself a moment to reflect. The day had been punishing, both physically and mentally. Yet with each challenge, she discovered something vital. Her perseverance, her ability to adapt, and her calm under pressure were advantages that could not be measured in size or brute strength alone. While others relied on intimidation and raw force, she relied on strategy, timing, and discipline. She had learned to use every ounce of energy efficiently, every movement calculated, every strike precise. Even as exhaustion settled in, Emily refused to yield to despair. Her thoughts drifted to home, to the quiet evenings in the dojo, where her father had pushed her to master control over her body and mind. Those early lessons had seemed abstract at the time, but now they were her lifeline. She realized that the ridicule she faced, daily mocking, laughter, dismissive glances, was merely noise. Her mission was clear: master her body, prove her skill, and turn doubt into astonishment. The day ended with a final endurance drill, a long circuit of physical and mental tasks designed to test the limits of each recruit. Emily's muscles screamed in protest, her breath came in ragged gasps, and her uniform was soaked with sweat and grime. Yet step by step, movement by movement, she pressed forward. Her mind focused not on the laughter or the judgment, but on precision and strategy. She climbed walls, crawled under obstacles, carried heavy loads, and executed complex maneuvers with growing confidence. By the time the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the training grounds, Emily stood apart from the crowd, still exhausted, but standing tall, proud of her achievements. She had struggled, faltered, and been underestimated at every turn, yet she had endured. Small victories, unnoticed by many, marked the first steps of her transformation. The laughter of her peers had not diminished her. In fact, it had strengthened her resolve. She had learned that strength was not just physical. It was mental, emotional, and strategic. As Emily returned to the barracks that evening, she knew one undeniable truth: her journey had only just begun. The ridicule she faced daily would continue, and the challenges ahead would grow exponentially more difficult. But she had discovered her own power, the silent confidence that could not be shaken by taunts or skepticism. Each step, each drill, each struggle was preparing her for a moment that would demand every ounce of her skill and determination, moment that would redefine how her peers saw her. That night, as she lay on her bunk, muscles aching and body drenched in exhaustion, Emily closed her eyes and visualized the days to come. She saw herself moving with fluid precision, executing strikes and maneuvers that others couldn't anticipate. She imagined the shock on the faces of those who had mocked her, the awe of instructors who had witnessed her resilience, and the quiet pride of knowing she had earned every success. Sleep came fitfully, but even in dreams, her focus never wavered. She knew that perseverance, patience, and unwavering discipline were her true weapons, and that one day, all the mockery would turn to astonishment. By the end of this second day, Emily had learned an essential lesson. Struggle was temporary, but resilience forged strength beyond measure. Every stumble, every challenge, every mocking laugh was part of the process. She had emerged stronger, more focused, and more determined than ever to prove herself, not just to her peers, but to herself. The path ahead was grueling, but Emily Parker had already begun to carve her place among the Marines. And deep inside, she knew that the day would come when no one would dare doubt her again. The third week of training began with a level of intensity that even seasoned recruits described as relentless. The sun hung high over the Marine Corps' recruit depot, beating down mercilessly on the asphalt and sand. Emily Parker had already learned to embrace the pain, the sweat, and the physical exhaustion that defined each day. Yet today felt different, heavier somehow, more punishing, as if the instructors had been waiting to push her past her previous limits. She rose from her bunk at dawn, her body stiff from the prior day's drills, and prepared herself for a day that would demand not just endurance, but cunning, precision, and mental agility. As she stepped onto the parade ground, Emily noticed the silent scrutiny of her fellow recruits. Their laughter from previous weeks had dwindled, replaced by an uncertain curiosity. A few whispered among themselves, casting quick glances at her slight frame and calculating what she might be capable of. Emily didn't respond. She had learned that her focus could not waver for even a second. Any hint of distraction could spell failure. Every drill, every obstacle, every movement had to be executed with the precision of a weapon, honed over years of disciplined training. The morning session began with hand-to-hand combat exercises. Instructors paired recruits according to perceived strength, pairing larger, more confident Marines with smaller recruits they assumed would fail. Emily found herself paired with a particularly aggressive recruit named Thompson, a man whose biceps alone seemed capable of bending steel. He towered over her, a smirk of arrogance etched across his face. "Ready to eat dirt, little girl?" he taunted. Emily ignored him, centering herself as she had learned in countless martial arts sessions. Inwardly, she welcomed the challenge. The drill commenced with a flurry of strikes and counter-moves. Thompson swung with raw force, relying on strength over strategy. Emily danced around him, slipping his blows and redirecting momentum with deft precision. Each movement was a calculation, each strike a measured response. Instructors paused occasionally, observing her technique with subtle nods of approval. Whispers began to ripple through the sidelines. Some recruits were astonished at her agility, others skeptical, unwilling to admit that they had misjudged her. Thompson, meanwhile, grew frustrated. Every strike he threw was deflected, countered, or absorbed without giving him any advantage. By the end of the session, Emily stood unscathed, Thompson panting and flushed, a mixture of anger and disbelief on his face. Next came endurance drills, designed to combine physical strength with tactical decision-making. Recruits were tasked with carrying heavy packs across rugged terrain, scaling walls, crawling through muddy trenches, and completing complex maneuvers under time constraints. Emily approached each obstacle methodically. While others relied on brute force and sheer effort, she relied on efficiency, technique, and careful energy management. Every move was deliberate, planting feet, distributing weight, anticipating resistance. She climbed walls with minimal effort, crawled through mud with controlled movements, and adjusted her strategy in real time as she encountered new challenges. Despite her growing mastery, the mental toll of constant scrutiny and subtle ridicule remained. Some recruits still whispered, skeptical of her abilities. "She's fast, but she won't last in real combat," one said. Emily ignored them, focusing instead on refining her technique. She knew that patience and observation were as important as physical skill. By watching her opponents carefully, she could predict their moves, exploit weaknesses, and execute with maximum efficiency. Every glance, every gesture, every pause became part of her mental arsenal, a library of data she could use to outmaneuver even the most imposing adversaries. By mid-morning, the instructors introduced advanced tactical exercises. Recruits were paired in groups and tasked with simulated combat scenarios, requiring teamwork, strategy, and rapid decision-making. Emily's group struggled initially, with some recruits unwilling to cooperate, others relying on brute force to compensate for lack of coordination. Emily quickly assumed a quiet leadership role, directing movements, identifying threats, and positioning her teammates strategically. Though she did not speak loudly or assert dominance, her decisions were clear, efficient, and effective. Slowly, her peers began to follow her lead, realizing that her insight and tactical awareness were invaluable. As the exercises continued, Emily's martial arts training began to manifest in more pronounced ways. During a close-quarters sparring drill, she demonstrated the ability to anticipate strikes before they occurred, redirecting force with minimal effort and precision. In one instance, a recruit attempted a heavy punch aimed to overwhelm her. With a subtle shift of her weight and a precise pivot, Emily deflected the attack and used his momentum to off-balance him, sending him stumbling backward. Instructors paused briefly, clearly impressed by her technical skill. Even the skeptical recruits were forced to reconsider their assumptions. The afternoon brought a test of agility and reflexes, a rapid series of combat scenarios where multiple recruits attacked a single target. Emily's task was simple in description, but deadly in execution: evade, counter, and survive. As the first recruit lunged, she sidestepped, twisted, and delivered a precise strike that forced him back. The second came faster, swinging with aggression, and she parried and redirected with split-second timing. By the time the third and fourth approached, her movements were almost a blur, calculated, efficient, and devastatingly effective. Whispers rippled through the sidelines. The laughter of weeks past had vanished, replaced by astonishment. Emily's mind, honed by martial arts and countless hours of strategic thinking, processed multiple threats simultaneously. She anticipated attacks, leveraged opponents' weight against them, and maintained perfect control over her own body. Her small frame, once considered a disadvantage, allowed her to move with fluidity that her larger opponents could not match. For the first time, the other recruits began to perceive her not as a timid outsider, but as a formidable force, calm, calculated, and dangerously skilled. The final exercise of the day was designed to push mental and physical endurance to the breaking point. Recruits were subjected to an obstacle-laden course while blindfolded, relying on guidance from teammates and memory of the terrain. Emily approached with cautious determination. While others stumbled, panicked, or overexerted themselves, she relied on spatial awareness, intuition, and concentration. Every step, every grab, every pivot was precise. She completed the course with speed and control, earning quiet nods from instructors and stunned silence from peers. Even those who had doubted her abilities could not deny her mastery. By evening, Emily returned to the barracks, muscles aching and body drenched with sweat, but a quiet satisfaction settled over her. She had faced the ridicule, the skepticism, and the physical demands head-on, and she had emerged stronger, sharper, and more confident. The laughter of her peers no longer held power over her. It had been replaced by a growing respect, however reluctant, for the young woman who refused to be dismissed. As she lay on her bunk that night, reflecting on the day, Emily realized a critical truth. Success in this environment required more than strength or endurance. It required discipline, mental acuity, patience, and a willingness to endure ridicule without losing focus. Every taunt, every doubting glance, every underestimation from her peers became fuel, propelling her forward. She had discovered her own hidden advantage, the ability to remain calm under pressure, to analyze and adapt, and to strike with precision when opportunity presented itself. Her journey was far from over. The coming days promised even greater challenges, scenarios that would test her limits physically, mentally, and emotionally. Yet Emily felt ready. The struggles, the laughter, and the early missteps were all shaping her into something formidable. She understood now that being underestimated was not a weakness, it was a weapon, a tool she could use to her advantage when the moment demanded it. As sleep finally claimed her, Emily imagined the days ahead, sparring with increasingly skilled opponents, navigating complex obstacle courses, and demonstrating the full extent of her martial arts mastery. She visualized herself moving with fluidity and precision, leaving those who had doubted her in stunned silence. And deep down, she knew that the time would come when she would turn every underestimation into awe, every mocking laugh into astonishment, and every doubt into undeniable proof of her strength, skill, and determination. By the end of this third week, Emily Parker had not only adapted to the punishing routines of Marine training, but had begun to assert her presence in subtle, undeniable ways. She was no longer just the small girl who couldn't keep up. She was emerging as a force to be reckoned with, a silent, calculating, precise fighter whose true potential was only beginning to be glimpsed. The stage was set for the challenges ahead, and the Marine Corps would soon learn that underestimation could be a grave mistake. The fourth week of training dawned crisp and unforgiving. Emily Parker awoke before the sun, the chill in the air biting at her skin through the layers of her uniform. Her muscles ached from the previous week's grueling drills, yet she felt a quiet sense of anticipation. Something was different about today. The instructor's gazes were sharper, more calculating, and Emily sensed that the challenges ahead would not simply test her endurance, they would test everything she had learned, physically, mentally, and strategically. After a silent breakfast, the recruits assembled on the parade ground. The usual chatter and whispered taunts were present, though diminished. The small smirks aimed at Emily had begun to fade, replaced with cautious curiosity. Word of her previous performances had begun to circulate. A few recruits exchanged uneasy glances, perhaps realizing that the quiet, small-framed girl they had mocked was no longer just keeping up, she was excelling. Emily felt no rush to gloat. The battle of perception was as crucial as any physical contest, and she intended to let her actions speak for themselves. The day's main event was announced, an advanced sparring drill designed to simulate combat under pressure. Recruits were paired for one-on-one matches, and the instructor selected opponents based on observed skill and size. Emily's partner, Marcus, was one of the camp's strongest recruits, a towering figure whose confidence was nearly palpable. A wide grin crossed his face when he saw her. "This'll be easy," he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. The surrounding recruits laughed, echoing his assumption. Emily's jaw tightened, but her expression remained calm. She had anticipated a moment like this, a stage where her patience, observation, and skill could finally demonstrate their worth. The instructors called them to the center of the mat. Emily inhaled deeply, centering herself, recalling the countless hours of martial arts practice, the late-night shadow drills, and the precise techniques she had perfected over years. Marcus launched the first attack aggressively, a heavy swing designed to overwhelm her quickly. Emily sidestepped, her movements fluid and controlled. She didn't just dodge. She anticipated his next strike, subtly shifting her weight, redirecting his momentum, and landing a precise counter that startled him. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus's attacks grew more frantic, his frustration mounting. Emily's responses, however, remained calm, calculated, and deceptively effortless. She deflected each blow with minimal motion, leveraging her small frame to maintain speed and agility. Her strikes were deliberate, targeting vulnerable areas with precision rather than brute force. The instructors leaned forward, scrutinizing her form, clearly impressed. Emily could feel a shift in the room. The laughter and mockery of weeks past had been replaced by astonishment and, in some cases, quiet respect. The sparring continued, each exchange revealing more of Emily's hidden capabilities. Marcus lunged with a powerful punch. Emily pivoted, using his momentum against him, sending him stumbling backward. He regained balance, attacking again, but she anticipated, deflected, and countered with flawless timing. It wasn't just physical skill at work, it was strategic thinking, honed by countless hours of observation and practice. Every movement was intentional, every dodge and strike a statement. Recruits on the sidelines began whispering, watching closely, some in disbelief. "She's fast," one muttered. Another shook his head. "I didn't think she had it in her." Emily ignored them. Validation was irrelevant. The moment demanded focus, precision, and control. She was proving something far greater than physical strength. She was demonstrating mastery over mind, body, and strategy. After several intense rounds, Marcus attempted a particularly aggressive maneuver, intending to catch Emily off guard with brute power. She anticipated it instantly, sidestepped with perfect timing, and executed a swift, precise counter that unbalanced him completely. He fell hard onto the mat, a look of shock on his face, while the surrounding recruits fell silent. Even the instructors paused, nodding subtly at the effectiveness of her technique. Emily stood, her breathing steady, her face calm, exuding confidence that belied the adrenaline coursing through her veins. It was the first moment in training where her peers began to see her not as an outsider, but as a serious contender. Her small stature, once perceived as a disadvantage, had become a weapon. Her agility, timing, and understanding of leverage allowed her to manipulate opponents far larger and stronger than herself. This was the turning point, the moment where ridicule began to dissolve into respect. The next exercise was a group tactical drill designed to simulate real battlefield scenarios. Recruits were assigned to teams and tasked with navigating complex obstacle courses while evading simulated enemy attacks. Emily's team was initially chaotic. Some recruits were disorganized, others relied too heavily on brute strength. Emily quickly assessed the situation, issuing concise, strategic guidance to her teammates. Though she did not shout or assert dominance, her directions were precise, effective, and immediately respected. Slowly, her team began to move cohesively, achieving objectives efficiently and with minimal errors. During one particularly tricky segment, Emily noticed an opening, a gap in the opposition's coverage that her team could exploit. Without hesitation, she signaled the move, leading her teammates through with perfect timing. The instructors observed closely, clearly impressed by her combination of tactical awareness, leadership, and calm under pressure. For the first time, other recruits approached her with cautious curiosity, some even seeking advice on maneuvering through the obstacles. Emily's silent authority was emerging, not through intimidation, but through undeniable competence. Later, during a solo combat scenario designed to simulate ambush conditions, Emily faced multiple opponents simultaneously. The recruits attacked aggressively, confident that their numbers would overwhelm her. Emily's focus never wavered. She dodged, pivoted, and struck with precision, using each opponent's weight and momentum against them. It was a controlled display of martial arts mastery, one that left instructors nodding in approval and fellow recruits stunned into silence. The room was tense with disbelief. The girl they had laughed at weeks ago was now a formidable presence no one could ignore. By the end of the day, Emily's reputation had shifted noticeably. She had turned ridicule into astonishment, doubt into respect, and underestimation into careful attention. Instructors remarked on her precision, agility, and strategic thinking. Even the toughest recruits, those who had once mocked her, were forced to reconsider their assumptions. Whispers of admiration began to circulate, though few admitted it openly. Emily, however, remained composed. She knew that respect was earned through consistent performance, not fleeting victories. As she returned to the barracks, Emily reflected on the day's events. The turning point had arrived not in a single moment, but through a series of calculated actions, precise techniques, and unwavering focus. She had proven that skill, strategy, and determination could overcome physical disadvantage, that patience and observation could turn ridicule into power. The laughter of her peers no longer held sway. She had learned to channel their doubt into motivation, allowing it to sharpen her abilities rather than weaken her resolve. That night, as she lay on her bunk with muscles sore and body exhausted, Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. She replayed the day's sparring, every maneuver, every tactical decision, every calculated strike. She understood now that training was not simply about enduring physical hardship. It was about mental mastery, discipline, and adaptability. These qualities, honed quietly over years of martial arts practice and relentless effort, had allowed her to seize her first real advantage. Emily's thoughts also turned to the future. The next stages of training would be even more challenging. Larger, stronger opponents awaited, exercises designed to push her to her limits, and simulations that demanded absolute control under stress. Yet she felt prepared. The turning point had given her more than confidence. It had given her clarity. She now understood that every taunt, every underestimation, every skeptical glance was an opportunity. Her path forward was no longer about proving survival. It was about demonstrating dominance, skill, and mastery in a world that had underestimated her. As sleep finally claimed her, Emily envisioned the days ahead, sparring with multiple opponents, navigating increasingly complex obstacle courses, and demonstrating the full extent of her martial arts expertise. She imagined herself moving with precision and efficiency, turning underestimation into awe, ridicule into respect. She knew, deep down, that the moment would come when her skill would leave no doubt. Her transformation from the small, underestimated recruit into a force to be reckoned with had begun in earnest, and there was no turning back. By the end of Part 4, Emily had experienced her first significant turning point. She had moved from being doubted and mocked to being respected and observed with cautious attention. She had demonstrated not only physical prowess, but also mental acuity, tactical awareness, and composure under pressure. The stage was set for the escalating challenges ahead, where her skills would be tested against increasingly formidable opposition, leading to the moments that would cement her legend in the training grounds. The 5th week of training arrived like a storm on the horizon, intense, unrelenting, and impossible to ignore. Emily Parker awoke to the shrill sound of the morning horn, muscles sore but mind razor-sharp. The past weeks had transformed her physically, but today's challenges promised to push her endurance, skill, and mental focus to unprecedented levels. She dressed quickly, ensuring every crease in her uniform was sharp, every piece of gear correctly positioned. Even in the smallest details, she knew precision could make the difference between success and failure. As she stepped onto the parade ground, Emily observed the usual cacophony of recruits, stretching, choking, and sizing each other up. Yet there was a palpable tension in the air. Whispers circulated among the ranks about her previous demonstrations, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity in the tones. For the first time, Emily sensed genuine attention rather than ridicule. Her presence commanded it not through arrogance, but through consistent, undeniable skill and composure. She walked with the calm confidence of someone who had mastered both her body and her mind. The morning's first exercise was a complex obstacle course that demanded agility, balance, and endurance. It was the kind of challenge designed to separate the truly capable from the merely strong. High walls loomed over muddy trenches. Narrow beams stretched precariously above shallow water. Ropes twisted like serpents, demanding precise grip and timing. Emily approached each obstacle with methodical focus. Her mind, honed from years of martial arts, calculated every step, every swing, every pivot. Where brute force failed others, her efficiency and technique allowed her to move with speed and precision. She reached the rope climb, her arms quivering under the strain of her own body weight. Sweat streamed down her face, making the rope slick, but Emily had anticipated the challenge. She planted her feet firmly, engaged her core, and ascended with smooth, deliberate motions. Unlike many of her peers, she did not rush. Each movement was measured, conserving energy while maximizing control. By the time she reached the top, her landing was silent, precise, and balanced, a subtle demonstration of skill that drew quiet admiration from nearby instructors. After the obstacle course, Emily faced a hand-to-hand combat drill designed to simulate high-stress scenarios. Recruits were paired in quick succession, forcing them to adapt rapidly to unfamiliar opponents. Emily's first few matches were against larger, more aggressive Marines who relied on raw power and intimidation. She dodged, pivoted, and countered with precision. Her strikes were deliberate, leveraging angles, timing, and leverage rather than strength alone. By the third round, murmurs began circulating among the sidelines. Whispers of awe replaced the laughter that had once accompanied her entrance into training. Despite her growing mastery, tension built steadily. Emily could sense that today's exercises were pushing every recruit to the edge, testing not only their physical abilities, but also their capacity for focus under pressure. Mental fatigue became as significant a threat as muscle exhaustion. Some recruits began to stumble, their movements sloppy, their decision-making impaired by stress and adrenaline. Emily, however, maintained her composure. Her mind processed multiple variables simultaneously: opponent positions, momentum, terrain, and timing. Every choice was deliberate, every action precise. By midday, the instructors introduced a tactical team exercise that heightened the stakes even further. Groups of recruits were tasked with navigating a complex course while defending against simulated attacks. Emily's team initially struggled. Communication faltered, panic set in, and some recruits relied solely on brute force to compensate for their lack of strategy. Observing the chaos, Emily quickly assessed weaknesses and opportunities. She began issuing concise, tactical guidance to her teammates. Without raising her voice, she orchestrated their movements, positioning each member for maximum efficiency while minimizing risk. Slowly, the team's cohesion improved and their progress accelerated. During one particularly dangerous segment of the course, Emily noticed a gap in the opposition's formation, a brief opening that could determine the outcome of the exercise. With a subtle hand signal and clear, calculated instructions, she led her team through the breach, exploiting the opportunity with flawless timing. Instructors paused, some nodding with approval, as they observed the strategic precision she displayed. Even recruits who had previously doubted her skills were forced to watch, realizing that Emily's competence extended beyond individual combat. Her tactical awareness and leadership were equally formidable. The tension escalated further with a combined physical and mental endurance drill. Recruits were required to complete a series of high-intensity exercises while answering rapid-fire, tactical questions posed by instructors. The dual demand of physical strain and cognitive focus left many faltering. Emily, however, thrived. Her martial arts training had ingrained discipline and focus that allowed her to maintain clarity despite fatigue. She completed push-ups, burpees, and sprints while accurately responding to tactical scenarios, her mind and body operating in perfect synchrony. Later, a hand-to-hand combat scenario was introduced that forced Emily to face multiple opponents simultaneously. Recruits attacked in coordinated bursts, confident that numbers would overwhelm her. Emily's responses were precise, fluid, and controlled. She sidestepped, deflected, and countered each assault with a combination of technique, timing, and leverage that left her opponents staggered. Some fell, others retreated slightly, their expressions betraying disbelief. Observers on the sidelines fell silent, recognizing that the recruit they had once dismissed was now a force they could not ignore. Even as the day wore on, the suspense continued to build. Instructors escalated the complexity of each exercise, introducing unpredictable variables, surprise attacks, and extended endurance tests. Emily adapted seamlessly, adjusting strategies in real time, reading opponents' movements before they acted, and maintaining flawless composure. Each successful maneuver amplified her growing reputation among peers. The laughter and mockery of earlier weeks were now a distant memory, replaced by respect, astonishment, and a subtle wariness. By late afternoon, Emily faced what would become one of the most challenging drills of the week, a series of consecutive combat simulations, where fatigue would push recruits to their limits. Opponents came in rapid succession, testing her speed, reflexes, and mental acuity. Emily relied on every ounce of training, focusing on precision rather than force. She anticipated attacks, leveraged momentum against aggressors, and executed counters with perfect timing. By the end of the exercise, several Marines lay stunned or struggling to recover, and the instructors exchanged impressed glances. As the final exercise of the day concluded, Emily stood quietly, her chest heaving and sweat dripping from her brow. The tension that had built all day was palpable, but she remained composed, her mind clear and focused. For the first time, many of her peers were beginning to view her as more than just the small girl in training. Her combination of physical skill, mental acuity, tactical awareness, and unwavering composure had turned ridicule into cautious respect. She had proven that underestimation was her greatest weapon. Returning to the barracks that evening, Emily reflected on the day's events. The rising suspense and escalating challenges had tested her limits, but she had emerged stronger, more capable, and more confident than ever. She understood now that success in this environment required more than strength alone. It demanded mental sharpness, strategic thinking, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Each obstacle, each opponent, each moment of fatigue had reinforced these lessons, forging her into a formidable presence within the ranks. As she lay on her bunk, muscles sore and body exhausted, Emily allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. She had navigated a day of relentless challenges with skill and precision, turning doubt into astonishment and laughter into respect. The rising suspense had not broken her, it had strengthened her. She had proven that endurance, intelligence, and composure could overcome raw strength, and that being underestimated could be transformed into a strategic advantage. Emily knew that the most significant challenges were still ahead. Larger opponents, more complex scenarios, and higher stakes awaited. Yet she felt ready. The lessons of this week had crystallized her understanding of what it meant to master not just the physical elements of combat, but the mental and strategic aspects as well. She was no longer merely surviving. She was evolving, preparing for the moment when her skills would leave no doubt about her capabilities. That night, as darkness settled over the barracks and her peers slept fitfully, Emily visualized the challenges to come. She imagined moving with fluid precision, anticipating every attack and turning underestimation into awe. Every drill, every obstacle, every moment of scrutiny had built toward this point, honing her body, mind, and spirit. She drifted into a deep sleep, muscles sore but mind alert, dreaming not of the laughter of others, but of the triumph that awaited, the moment when her discipline, skill, and strategic mastery would culminate in undeniable victory. By the end of Part 5, Emily had solidified her transformation from an underestimated recruit into a skilled, strategic, and increasingly respected Marine. The rising suspense of training, escalating challenges, and her growing mastery set the stage for the climactic moment, where her true abilities would astonish instructors and peers alike, turning ridicule into awe and establishing her as a force to be reckoned with. By the 6th week, the intensity of Marine Corps training had reached near unbearable levels. Emily Parker awoke before dawn, muscles still sore from the relentless progression of exercises over the past 5 weeks. Her body ached, yet her mind was sharper than ever. Each day had honed her endurance, focus, and tactical thinking. Today, however, felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, an unspoken tension among recruits and instructors alike, as if everyone knew something significant was about to happen. The morning began like any other, with stretching, calisthenics, and rapid drills designed to push recruits past their limits. But Emily could sense a shift. The usual whispers from fellow Marines, those who once mocked her, had transformed into hushed discussions, their tones tinged with curiosity and caution. A few cast glances at her with unspoken acknowledgement. Emily Parker had become a name that demanded attention, a recruit whose skill could no longer be dismissed. She remained composed, knowing that respect was earned through action, not reputation. The instructors gathered the recruits on the main training ground for a special demonstration, a combined hand-to-hand combat drill involving multiple opponents simultaneously. Emily watched as groups of Marines paired off, racing for the chaos that was about to unfold. The instructor's instructions were clear. Each recruit must demonstrate the ability to neutralize multiple aggressors, relying on technique, timing, and mental acuity. Emily's pulse quickened. This was the moment she had trained for, the culmination of weeks of preparation, strategy, and disciplined practice. Her opponent group was formidable. 6 male Marines, all taller and stronger than Emily, lined up in front of her, smirking confidently. Some whispered among themselves, clearly underestimating her. "This'll be easy," one muttered. "Don't get hurt, little lady." Laughter rippled through the crowd, though a few recruits looked uneasy, sensing that Emily's reputation might be more than mere rumor. Emily's jaw tightened, her eyes focused, her mind sharp. She had anticipated this moment, and every ounce of her training was ready. The instructors gave the signal. The 6 Marines lunged simultaneously, intending to overwhelm her through sheer size and aggression. Emily's response was instantaneous. She sidestepped the first attack, pivoting gracefully, using his momentum to send him off balance. The second approached from her side, swinging forcefully, but she anticipated the strike, blocking and redirecting him with minimal effort. Every move was a precise calculation, each reaction the product of hours of practice, observation, and mental focus. The crowd of recruits fell silent. Whispers of disbelief replaced the laughter that had once accompanied her every misstep. Emily moved with a fluidity and efficiency that seemed almost unnatural. Her small frame allowed her to navigate the chaos with speed and grace, evading attacks, redirecting momentum, and exploiting every opening. With each strike, each pivot, each redirection, one Marine after another was sent staggering back, unable to recover before the next precise maneuver reached them. It was a display of skill and timing that seemed effortless. Emily had honed her martial arts techniques to perfection, combining leverage, precision strikes, and rapid counters into a choreography of effectiveness. The 6 Marines, confident in their size and strength, were unprepared for her calculated approach. One by one, they lost balance, fell to the ground, or stumbled, unable to anticipate her movement. The spectators watched in awe, unable to believe what they were witnessing. As the last of the 6 Marines fell, the silence in the training yard was almost deafening. Instructors paused, nodding subtly at her mastery, while other recruits stared with wide eyes, their previous skepticism replaced by astonishment. Emily stood, breathing steadily despite the adrenaline coursing through her body, her expression calm and composed. She had turned ridicule into astonishment, doubt into respect, and underestimation into a display of undeniable skill. This moment, however, was more than just a physical triumph. It was the culmination of everything Emily had learned over weeks of grueling training, the discipline to endure pain and fatigue, the strategic thinking to anticipate and counter multiple opponents, and the mental fortitude to remain calm under pressure. Her years of martial arts training had been the foundation, but it was her unwavering focus and adaptability that had allowed her to dominate against superior numbers. The reaction from her peers was immediate and dramatic. The Marines who had mocked her earlier now looked at her with a mixture of awe and wariness. Even the toughest, most confident recruits began to recognize that Emily Parker was no longer to be underestimated. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Did you see that? She just dropped 6 guys at once. I never thought she could do that." Emily, however, ignored the attention. She knew that respect was not given, it was earned, and she had earned it today in the most decisive way possible. Instructors approached her afterward, their expressions a mixture of approval and mild astonishment. "Outstanding technique," one said. "Precision, timing, and composure. You've set a new standard for this drill." Emily nodded, acknowledging the compliment without pride or arrogance. She had no desire for accolades. Her goal had always been personal mastery, not recognition. Yet even she could not deny the sense of accomplishment that filled her. She had transformed from the small, underestimated recruit into a figure of undeniable skill and effectiveness. The rest of the day continued with a series of additional challenges, but the legendary moment had set the tone. Recruits approached exercises with a new awareness of Emily's abilities, adjusting their strategies accordingly. She moved through obstacle courses, sparring sessions, and tactical drills with the same precision and composure she had displayed against 6 opponents. Her reputation had shifted irrevocably. No longer the quiet underdog, she had become a force to be acknowledged, respected, and in some cases, feared. That evening, as Emily returned to the barracks, she reflected on the day's events. The laughter that had once accompanied her entrance into training was gone, replaced by silence and admiration. Her small frame, once considered a disadvantage, had become an instrument of efficiency and control. Her ability to maintain calm under extreme pressure had allowed her to turn multiple adversaries into a single, manageable challenge. It was a lesson not just for her peers, but for herself. Underestimation could be transformed into power, doubt into advantage, and ridicule into triumph. As she lay on her bunk that night, muscles aching and body exhausted, Emily allowed herself a rare moment of pride. She had not only survived the grueling physical demands of Marine training, but she had done so in a way that set her apart from her peers. She had demonstrated mastery, strategy, and composure under pressure, the qualities that defined not just a successful recruit, but a true Marine. Even in the quiet moments before sleep, Emily's mind remained sharp, replaying the sequence of movements that had allowed her to dominate 6 opponents simultaneously. She analyzed every pivot, every strike, every redirection, considering how she could refine her technique even further. This was not arrogance. It was discipline. Every victory was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to prepare for the next challenge. By the end of Part 6, Emily Parker had achieved a legendary moment. She had faced 6 Marines simultaneously and neutralized them with precision, control, and efficiency. This demonstration transformed her from an underestimated recruit into a figure of respect, awe, and cautious wariness. Her skills, discipline, and mental fortitude had proven that true strength is not measured by size or brute force, but by focus, strategy, and execution. The stage was now set for the remaining weeks of training. Emily's peers and instructors alike had been forced to recognize her capabilities. What lay ahead would test her in new ways. Larger-scale scenarios, tactical leadership challenges, and the culmination of all her training into a single defining moment. But Emily was ready. She had faced doubt, ridicule, and fatigue, and emerged victorious. Her journey had reached a pivotal point, one that would define not only her reputation among the Marines, but also her own understanding of strength, discipline, and perseverance. After the legendary moment that left 6 Marines off balance at once, Emily Parker's reputation had shifted dramatically. The laughter and mockery of her early weeks had been replaced by a mix of awe, cautious respect, and whispered speculation. She moved through the training grounds with quiet confidence, aware that every eye was on her, every peer measuring her capability. Yet Emily remained composed. She knew that respect was fragile and could be lost through overconfidence. Her focus was always forward toward the next challenge, the next drill, the next opportunity to refine her skills. The day began before sunrise. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and earth, a reminder of the relentless demands of training. Emily rose, stretched methodically, and prepared for the tasks ahead. In the barracks, her fellow recruits avoided direct eye contact, some still processing what they had witnessed the previous day. A few approached, offering tentative nods or brief acknowledgments of her skill. Emily responded with quiet courtesy, not pride, understanding that camaraderie and respect were earned through consistent performance, not a single moment of triumph. The morning's exercises focused on advanced team tactics. Instructors divided recruits into squads and tasked them with navigating complex, simulated battlefield scenarios. Emily's squad was composed of a mix of strong, experienced recruits and those newer or less coordinated. Observing their movements, she immediately identified weaknesses, gaps in formation, over-reliance on brute force, and hesitation in critical moments. Without drawing attention to herself, she began directing her team subtly, issuing precise instructions, anticipating potential threats, and orchestrating their movements for maximum efficiency. Her tactical insight was immediately evident. Obstacles were navigated with minimal error, simulated ambushes were avoided, and objectives were achieved with speed and precision. Instructors observed closely, clearly impressed by her ability to lead without commanding loudly or dominating the scene. Her peers, initially resistant, began to follow her guidance instinctively. Emily's mastery was becoming more than a personal achievement. It was a force that elevated those around her. Later, during a series of close-quarters combat exercises, Emily was paired against the camp's top male recruits, those previously considered unbeatable. Each opponent brought raw strength and confidence to the mat, assuming they could overpower her as many had tried before. Emily, however, moved with calculated precision. She sidestepped, pivoted, and countered with efficiency honed over weeks of rigorous training. Her strikes were deliberate, targeted, and devastatingly effective, exploiting every opportunity to neutralize advantage. By the end of multiple rounds, even the most skeptical peers had begun to whisper in awe. Emily Parker was unparalleled. The instructors, recognizing her growing mastery, introduced a new challenge, the final endurance drill. This was a combination of physical exertion, tactical thinking, and mental resilience, designed to push recruits to the absolute limit before the final week of training. Recruits were tasked with completing a multi-stage obstacle course while carrying full gear, responding to rapidly changing tactical scenarios, and demonstrating precise hand-to-hand techniques under extreme fatigue. Emily approached the task with a sense of anticipation rather than dread. She thrived under pressure, viewing each obstacle as an opportunity to demonstrate skill and control. The course began with steep walls, narrow balance beams, and rope climbs, each more demanding than the last. Emily moved with effortless precision, her body adapting fluidly to the challenges. While larger, stronger recruits struggled to maintain balance or manage their stamina. She navigated the obstacles efficiently, conserving energy for later stages. Instructors took note of her ability to maintain composure under duress, a critical skill that set her apart from her peers. The mid-course challenge required recruits to engage multiple opponents in simulated combat scenarios. Emily's movements were a study in tactical brilliance. She anticipated attacks, redirected momentum, and neutralized threats with minimal effort. Her peers, exhausted and struggling, watched in awe as she executed maneuvers that seemed almost effortless. The same techniques that had allowed her to drop 6 Marines with a single move were now integrated into every aspect of her performance, demonstrating mastery under conditions of extreme fatigue and stress. Following the combat simulation, the course transitioned into a tactical problem-solving segment. Recruits were presented with rapidly evolving scenarios requiring instant decision-making, precise communication, and strategic movement. Emily's mind, trained for years in both martial arts and tactical thinking, processed information at remarkable speed. She assessed threats, identified opportunities, and directed her team with quiet authority. Each decision was deliberate, each instruction executed flawlessly. By the time the final stage of the course approached, Emily's squad moved like a single, cohesive unit, efficient, coordinated, and lethal in simulated terms. As the final obstacle neared, the instructors increased pressure with surprise challenges, sudden attacks, simulated injuries, and rapidly changing objectives. Fatigue and stress mounted, and many recruits faltered. Emily, however, remained composed, her movements precise and deliberate. She led her squad through the final obstacles, neutralized simulated threats, and completed the course with remarkable efficiency. Instructors paused to observe, clearly impressed. Emily's mastery was not simply physical. It was mental, strategic, and emotional, a holistic display of the qualities that define a true Marine. By the late afternoon, the training ground had grown quiet. The day's exercises had been brutal, yet Emily moved with poise and confidence, seemingly unshaken by exhaustion. Her peers, now fully aware of her abilities, treated her with a combination of respect, admiration, and cautious wariness. Some sought her advice. Others observed silently, learning from her technique. The transformation from the ridiculed recruit of the first week to a figure of mastery and authority was complete. As Emily returned to the barracks, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The early weeks of ridicule and doubt had tested her patience and resilience, but they had also forged her into a competitor of extraordinary skill and determination. The turning point, dropping 6 Marines with a single move, was no longer just an isolated moment of brilliance. It had become the foundation of her reputation, a testament to the power of preparation, discipline, and strategic thinking. That evening, Emily allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. She considered the lessons learned. Strength alone is insufficient. True power derives from technique, adaptability, and mental clarity. Respect is earned, not demanded, and leadership manifests not through dominance, but through quiet competence and decisive action. She understood now that the journey was as important as the outcome. The struggles, mistakes, and challenges of training had forged resilience and mastery that could not be achieved through talent alone. Instructors began to recognize Emily as a standout recruit, often citing her performance as exemplary during evaluations. Her peers, once skeptical, now sought her guidance or silently mirrored her movements during drills, acknowledging her effectiveness without overt acknowledgement. Emily's reputation had shifted irrevocably. She was no longer a small, underestimated recruit. She was a skilled, tactical, and disciplined Marine whose presence commanded attention and respect. As night fell over the barracks, Emily prepared for rest, but remained mentally engaged. She replayed the day's exercises, analyzing every decision, every movement, and every interaction. Even in exhaustion, she visualized improvements, refinements, and adjustments for future challenges. This relentless pursuit of excellence was her hallmark, a trait that distinguished her from peers who relied on raw strength or intimidation. Emily understood that mastery was a journey without end, each achievement a stepping stone to greater capability. By the end of Part 7, Emily Parker had solidified her transformation into a figure of mastery and leadership. The lessons of ridicule, perseverance, and tactical insight had culminated in a holistic display of skill that earned her respect from instructors and peers alike. She had demonstrated that discipline, strategy, and composure under pressure were as critical as physical strength, and her journey toward ultimate recognition within the Marines was nearly complete. The stage was now set for the final part of her story, where Emily would face the ultimate test, formal recognition, the culmination of her training, and the full acknowledgement of her extraordinary abilities by instructors and peers alike. The final week of training at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot dawned with an air of anticipation, unlike any Emily Parker had experienced. The grueling drills, relentless physical challenges, and mental tests of the previous 7 weeks had forged her into a Marine of extraordinary skill, discipline, and resilience. Yet today promised something more: formal recognition, the culmination of her journey, and the opportunity to demonstrate fully the mastery she had earned through sweat, strategy, and unwavering determination. Emily rose before dawn, her body still sore, but her mind laser-focused. She dressed carefully, ensuring every uniform crease and piece of gear was immaculate. Today was not about appearances. It was about precision, control, and execution. But as she looked around at the other recruits, she sensed a shift. Gone were the whispers of doubt and ridicule. In their place were expressions of curiosity, respect, and cautious admiration. Emily's presence commanded attention not through arrogance, but through the undeniable competence she had demonstrated time and again. The morning exercises began with an advanced series of obstacle courses designed to push recruits to the edge of endurance. Each obstacle required a combination of strength, agility, balance, and tactical thinking. Emily approached each challenge with calm determination, her movements precise and fluid. Where other recruits struggled with fatigue or poor technique, she executed every maneuver with efficiency and control. Instructors observed closely, noting not only her physical prowess, but also her ability to maintain composure under extreme pressure. Next came the hand-to-hand combat assessment, the moment that would formally cement her reputation among instructors and peers alike. Emily faced multiple opponents, including those previously regarded as the camp's strongest recruits. The instructor's instructions were clear: demonstrate mastery, control, and strategic effectiveness against superior numbers. Emily's heart raced, but her focus remained absolute. Every movement, strike, and pivot was deliberate, calculated, and executed with precision, honed over weeks of rigorous training. As the first opponent lunged, Emily sidestepped with flawless timing, using his momentum to off-balance him. The second attacked from the flank, but she anticipated the strike, redirecting his force with minimal effort. Each successive adversary approached with confidence, unaware that they were about to encounter a force they had underestimated. One by one, Emily neutralized their attacks, her small frame moving with agility and efficiency that left observers, both recruits and instructors, in stunned silence. When the final opponent fell back, exhausted and defeated, the crowd erupted in quiet murmurs of astonishment. Emily stood at the center of the mat, calm, composed, and utterly focused. This was more than a demonstration of physical skill. It was the culmination of weeks of discipline, mental acuity, and tactical mastery. The instructors nodded appreciatively, clearly impressed by her ability to combine strength, precision, and strategy in such a seamless display. Her peers, once skeptical and dismissive, now regarded her with undeniable respect. Following the combat assessment, the final phase of the day involved tactical team challenges and simulated battlefield exercises. Emily's squad had been assigned some of the most complex scenarios, requiring coordination, strategy, and rapid problem-solving. She quickly assumed a leadership role, directing movements, anticipating potential threats, and orchestrating responses with quiet authority. Her guidance was precise, her decisions calculated, and her execution flawless. The squad, previously uncoordinated, moved as a cohesive unit, completing objectives efficiently and with minimal error. As the day progressed, instructors introduced unexpected challenges to test adaptability: sudden ambushes, simulated injuries, and shifting objectives that demanded immediate reaction. Emily responded with poise, directing her team through each scenario while maintaining her own effectiveness in combat. She demonstrated not only technical mastery, but also mental resilience, leadership, and the ability to inspire confidence in others. Her performance was a masterclass in Marine training, blending skill, strategy, and composure under pressure. By late afternoon, the exercises concluded, and the recruits gathered for the final evaluation. Instructors approached Emily individually, offering words of praise and acknowledgement. "Outstanding performance," one said. "Precision, strategy, and control your execution sets a standard for this depot." Emily nodded quietly, her focus unshaken by the accolades. She had trained for mastery, not recognition, yet the acknowledgement of her peers and instructors was a validation of the discipline and effort that had brought her to this point. The final ceremony marked the official completion of training. As recruits stood in formation, Emily felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had begun this journey as a small, underestimated recruit, doubted by her peers and tested by relentless physical and mental challenges. Yet through persistence, discipline, and mastery, she had transformed not only her abilities, but also the perception of those around her. She was no longer just a small girl in training. She was a Marine, recognized for skill, composure, and leadership. Instructors presented awards and certificates, acknowledging exceptional performance. Emily's name was called, not for a single feat, but for her overall excellence, her mastery of both individual and team-based challenges, and her ability to inspire and elevate those around her. She stepped forward with quiet dignity, receiving her recognition with composure and grace. Cameras clicked, peers applauded, and for the first time, Emily allowed herself a smile of genuine satisfaction. As the ceremony concluded, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The weeks of relentless training, physical exhaustion, and mental challenges had forged more than skill. They had instilled resilience, discipline, and an unshakable confidence in her abilities. The ridicule she had once faced had been transformed into respect, her underestimation into a powerful advantage. Every obstacle, every sparring session, every moment of doubt or fatigue had been an essential part of her transformation. Her peers now sought her guidance, not out of fear, but out of respect for her mastery. Instructors acknowledged her skill and composure, often referencing her performance as exemplary. Emily had not only survived one of the most challenging training programs in the world, but she had emerged as a figure of inspiration and leadership. Her journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, focus, and discipline in the face of doubt and adversity. That evening, as the recruits celebrated their accomplishments and reflected on the weeks of grueling training, Emily found a quiet moment alone. She considered the lessons she had learned. True strength is not measured by size or brute force, but by precision, strategy, and mental resilience. Respect is earned through consistent effort, not fleeting triumphs. And underestimation can be transformed into a powerful advantage when paired with preparation and discipline. Emily Parker's story had reached its culmination. She had faced ridicule, skepticism, and challenges that tested the limits of her body and mind. She had turned doubt into motivation, criticism into focus, and underestimation into a demonstration of unparalleled skill. Through her journey, she had proven that mastery is not simply about physical strength, it is about control, strategy, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. As she looked out across the training grounds one last time, Emily felt a quiet pride. The small, underestimated recruit who had arrived weeks ago was gone, replaced by a Marine who had earned respect, admiration, and recognition through unwavering discipline and mastery. She had become a living example of what can be achieved when focus, skill, and perseverance converge, a figure whose journey would inspire others long after she had moved on from the depot. In the end, Emily Parker's triumph was not defined solely by the 6 Marines she had once dropped with a single move, but by the journey that had led to that moment, a journey of relentless training, mental fortitude, tactical brilliance, and unwavering resilience. She had transformed perception into reality, doubt into proof, and ridicule into recognition. The lessons of her journey would endure, not just for herself, but for every recruit who witnessed her rise. As the sun set over the barracks, Emily Parker stood tall, a symbol of mastery, perseverance, and the quiet power of unwavering discipline. She had achieved more than victory in drills or recognition from instructors. She had proven that determination, skill, and composure can overcome any obstacle, and that true strength lies in the mastery of both mind and body. Her legacy within the Marine Corps had been secured, and her story would be remembered as a testament to what can be accomplished when resilience and skill are forged together in pursuit of excellence.